All right. Thank you so much to everybody who's here joining us today. My name is Lisa Partida with Home in LA. And tonight we have Tom Fuentes with Banc of California. And we're going to be talking a little bit about, preparing for financial disasters. So if you're familiar with what's been going on, I think it's very important to kind of be prepared for situations where, you might need a little bit of extra cash. So I'll go ahead and pass it along to Tom.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, unfortunately, this workshop's kind of timely considering that we're in disaster recovery mode now with the recent fires that we've had in SoCal. Um, but hopefully, some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about in this workshop will be of use when times like that come about. So for this module, we're identifying ways that disasters can create financial challenges, identify ways to prepare financially for disasters, setting aside money for an emergency fund and what that looks like, keeping cash in a safe place, signing up for direct deposit, considering online and mobile banking services, and keeping your financial docs in a safe place. So preparing financially. In the first section, the key takeaway is going to be save time, money, and stress when a disaster strikes by making financial preparations. When people think of disasters, they often think of natural disasters, just like we went through recently with the fires. It also could be earthquakes or floods or hurricanes or tornadoes as well. There's other disasters, um, maybe human disaster related. Think of something that happened at the start of the year. There were some attacks, like terrorist attacks. That can also be something as well. Um, but I guess the bottom line is that no matter the disaster, a lot of these situations can certainly disrupt lives. It can cause mental, physical, emotional, and financial strain. So in order to mitigate these things, we need to do our best to be prepared for those things. Let's talk about how these things can affect finances. So, cost of meeting immediate needs, absolutely, when they're not available from usual sources. So, a disaster can affect the availability of food, water, shelter, and other basic needs. Disaster relief programs may not have these available immediately, especially right after a disaster happens. The cost of repairing and replacing items. Insurance and disaster relief programs may not cover your total loss. Timing absolutely matters. You may not cover replacement costs of some necessary items before you receive aid. Uh, there may be costs associated with with replacing important documents such as birth certificates, passports, and driver's licenses. Ongoing costs of the items that you need as a result of a disaster can be a thing too. These might include physical or mental health services. Sometimes services are provided for free shortly after a disaster, but eventually you'll have to pay for them on your own out of pocket. There's the possibility that you may be going through identity theft after a disaster. The disaster may have resulted in others having access to your personal financial information. You could also be the target of scams. Unfortunately, in these trying times in disaster recovery, scammers are out there trying to take advantage of you and your situation. Also, access to financial resources. Disasters might result in the loss of identification documents that you may need in order to gain access to your financial resources. Like if you wanted to go to the bank and take out money, do you have the proper identification necessary to do that? You may have lost or forgotten account numbers or access codes for some things because you had them maybe written down inside your house, and maybe there was a flood or some incidents that destroyed those docs. Debit cards, credit cards, checks could be lost or damaged, and you need to you would need to get replacements for these. Even though financial institutions work with you to resolve these situations, there could be a delay that could impede your ability to get these things. And then don't forget the possible penalties associated with missing payments, falling behind on bills, mortgage payments, or other expenses as a result of disaster recovery could be something that you're faced with, right? So what do we do to mitigate these things? We do our best to prepare in advance. You can visit ready.gov to review kind of broad general preparations uh, that could help more generally for disasters. Um, but let's talk about the things associated with your financials. So keep in mind, though, no one is ever 100% prepared for anything in life, especially a disaster that we can't see coming. But we'll talk about some actions to get you better prepared. Um, like get the insurance that you need to make sure that you're covered, um, and set money aside in an emergency fund. There's kind of no perfect answer for this. 3 months worth of your income, 6 months worth of your income, it just depends. There's a lot of opinions out there as to what is the appropriate emergency fund, but it's nice if you don't have one to start thinking about building one. Keep cash in a safe place. Sign up for a direct deposit so that the money is deposited directly into your account. Um, Consider arranging, if you don't have access to digital access like online banking or mobile banking, and then keep financial documents in a safe and secure place. And when we talk about like keeping cash or financial documents in a safe or secure place, one of the things that I noticed the last time my wife and I were at Target shopping just to pick up some odds and ends, we had a gift card from the holidays left over that we forgot about. And just as a result of the fires that SoCal was going through, we were looking at the small fireproof safes that they have. So maybe you can consider that to protect your documents. I saw them as low as, I think they were like $50 around there. Another thing that you may consider is maybe your financial institution has a safe deposit box. That's another place that you can place irreplaceable items or items that you don't want to see destroyed or lost because it takes a long time to to order them again. So insurance is a critical support after disasters, but you need to get the insurance before the disaster strikes, of course. Having insurance can reduce the financial impact of the covered loss that you sustain. It's important to have the right insurance, though. Like as we saw with the recent fires, a lot of times home ownership isn't enough. Um, you would have to consider actually getting a supplemental coverage for fire insurance in order to be covered in those situations. Um, Also consider shopping around for different insurance so that you can get the best deal possible. Periodically review your coverage. One of the things my wife and I were talking about as the new year turned was we pay our car insurance and our home insurance to two separate companies. We're thinking about combining it to try to get a discount, which I need to bring up to her because we talked about it like 4 weeks ago, but we haven't talked about it since. So but yeah, shop around, get the best deal. Um, and again, to reiterate, you want to keep records of personal property and things like that in a safe place. You can also consider for insurance, for future insurance purposes, in case it happens, to be prepared. You can always take photos and do an inventory log of the valuables that are in your home in case something happens as well. Um, you can get more information on insuranceonline.org. There's an inventory list that you can use, or at least to get you started in thinking about things like that. To add to the types of insurance, let's talk about this automobile coverages. Make sure that you're reviewing your coverages to make sure that um, you're up to date as far as a covered loss when it comes to automobile damage. Do you need comprehensive coverage? Do you need just liability insurance? Consider the best policy for the circumstances that you find yourself in currently, and shop around for that too, because there's a lot of different prices. Disability insurance can protect you from financial hardship if, in case you need to be covered of an illness or an injury. Life insurance can be protection for your loved ones in case you die, or when you die, rather. Renters insurance protect against your personal property for damage or loss when you're renting. And then, of course, homeowners insurance, we kind of already talked about that, but make sure that your coverage limits are acceptable for your current situation. And if you ever make upgrades to your home, make sure that those upgrades are in line with the amount of coverage that you have. You may need to reconsider upping those coverages. And we have apply it sections that are going to be in the participant guide for our workshops. We're not really going to go into it. This is something that you can do after the workshop. But the goal of the apply it sections is to kind of understand these scenarios and apply them to your life experience and your current situation. And in this one, it's a brief example of automobile insurance, understanding a little bit more about what insurance companies are covering, the coverage limits, and the key details and terms that you would need to know for that. It also will go into key items as far as disability insurance is concerned, also life insurance, renter's insurance, and homeowners insurance. It'll also cover a little bit of other types of insurance too, and whether those would be applicable to your situation. But go ahead and check that out afterwards. It kind of just will provide a little bit more context into the generalities that we're talking about in the workshop right now, but could be useful in reconsidering or at least doing an overview of your current insurance coverages if you have those. So one of the things that we talked about in the beginning was the idea of setting aside an emergency fund. Um, so when unexpected events like disasters occur, instead of having to rely on a credit card or having to take out maybe a personal loan or something like that, one of the things that you can draw from if you have is an emergency fund. Um, but we need to kind of understand the building blocks and how we're going to establish the fund, right? Um, so there's a lot of differing opinions on what the appropriate emergency fund comprises. I think generally it's about 3 to 6 months worth of your living expenses, which seems to be kind of the common idea amongst financial coaches and experts. Um, but one thing that we need to realize is that it really takes time and commitment in order to get us going. One of the things is that you want to set a goal, but you don't want to set the goal to be too big because you don't want it to be impossible to reach. So it's important to understand this as um, climbing a ladder. Each step up is a step forward in building up to the ultimate goal so that you can get to the top. It needs to be time bound. You need to set yourself a time goal as to when you're going to do this too. Even building smaller emergency savings funds can be the motivation necessary. Put $500 if you have it extra into in an account to get the ball rolling, if you will. Um, and then whenever you need to use the emergency savings, you need to consider replenishing the account so that you can be prepared in case something else comes up in the future as well. Your emergency savings fund will be important for bouncing back, right? Um, but what about meeting needs immediately after a disaster? So it's especially important if you can't access, it's especially important when you can't access your emergency funds right away. In the event of a disaster for a period of time, you may only be able to pay everyday purchases with cash. It certainly can happen. When choosing where to keep your emergency cash, consider ease of access in case of a disaster, but also keep safety and security in mind. The cash isn't helpful um, you know, in your dresser drawer, for example. Keep it in a safe place that you can access it quickly in the case of an evacuation. And we already kind of talked about this. Consider storing it in like a fire-resistant, waterproof lock box or portable safe with a combination. Um, Use the cash to cover costs until you have access to your emergency fund or other forms of payment as well. Um, One of the things too, it's important to make sure that you're signed up for a direct deposit. It's going to be too hard in the middle of a disaster for you to worry about having to deposit a physical check in your financial institution. Um, Another thing for direct deposits, not only with your employer, would be something like your pension benefits or public benefits, for example, too, and making sure those are deposited directly into your account so that you have immediate access to those. Um, so if you don't already have an account set up with this way, you can always contact your financial institution or your employer to figure out how to sign up for these services. And then we also have to consider arranging ourselves around the digital world and making sure that we have access to our accounts online and mobile banking on our phones or our tablets. Both are pretty readily available with most, if not all, financial institutions. It could be a great way to access money and communicate electronically if needed with your financial institution in case a disaster happens. You never know when you need to deposit a check digitally, for example, or when you would need to pay a bill if you have online bill pay set up with your account, or conduct other types of of transactions, like maybe you have Zelle on your account so that you can send digital payments, for example. Um, all these digital platforms can be ways to mitigate and be prepared in case of a disaster. And then, not to sound like a broken record, but making sure that we're keeping the financial documents in a safe place, having access to personal financial, insurance, medical, and other records can be crucial for making sure that we're recovering quickly in case a disaster occurs. We kind of already talked about this already. Um, Fireproof box or safe that's water resistant. Waterproof bags are another thing too, in case of a flood or a hurricane, for example, as well, or a safe deposit box at your financial institution. But keep in mind, if you're going the safe deposit box route at your bank, they charge you for those monthly. So consider how much that would cost and whether or not that would be important. And then finally, keep your records updated to make sure that you have the current information needed for when a disaster does strike. You can also have what we call an emergency financial first aid kit, EFFAK. Um, so FEMA advises people to prepare this. FEMA's online materials include checklists and forms to help you prepare, and recommends that the type of documents that you would need to keep in a safe place to form this kit. So you can go to FEMA.gov, and there's a downloadable emergency financial first aid kit that you can review, and it'll go into greater depth to allow you to be more prepared for the disaster. So in section one, we save time, money, and stress in case a disaster strikes by being better prepared um, for when that would happen. Um, but let's say we were under the unfortunate circumstance of actually going through a disaster. What do we do to recover from it financially? Um, so recovering financially. Um, we're going to talk about things and actions related to property, other than your home, but also your home, your income, your job, bills and expenses, money, nowhere to keep help recovering financially from disasters, um, being able to spot scams that target people recovering from disasters. Sorry. One of the things that I recently was invited to was a community, like a town hall online with one of our community partners in Los Angeles. And the town hall gathered a lot of community stakeholders like nonprofit organizations, city, county, and state government agencies, as well as some political leaders in the community to talk about the road to recovery as a result of the fires um, that we've endured. Um, And one of the unfortunate things that was talked about during that town hall was the amount of scamming that was going on, not only in the form of scamming for the purposes of trying to take advantage of people through home insurance scams, but also those folks who lost businesses due to the fires, whose like their storefronts pretty much burned down and they lost their livelihood. There's a lot of people taking advantage of small business owners in recovery. Um, so in order to be prepared, we have to plan and kind of uh, educate ourselves to spot these scams. But it's really heartbreaking to think that people would take advantage of people out there most vulnerable. Um, Anyhow, so in section two, which is going to be our final section of the workshop, we're going to talk about developing the initial plan to recover financially, and what we need to do to watch out so that we don't fall victim to these things. So the steps to financial recovery. So after the disaster, first priority is making sure, obviously, that you and your loved ones are safe, right? There could be injuries that require immediate attention. You may need to find temporary shelter, secure food, water, chargers for your phone, mobility devices, and just general necessities that you need altogether, right? You can visit disasterassistance.gov for information in responding to and recovering from disasters, and specifically things that are impacting your local community. We're focused in this training for the steps that we can take to recover financially, though. So let's get more into uh, the financial recovery aspects of it. Um, so we need to consider um, the steps for recovering in the terms of uh, property, other than home. What are some of those things? As well as our home, our income, our job, um, bills and expenses, and just protecting money in general. Um, so, assessing and document damage in writing and with photos is one of the key things in making sure that we are prepared to protect our property. We need to contact insurance providers about the damage that our property has incurred. Find a safe place to store cash and valuables that you took from home. Arrange for alternative transportation if you use a car or other vehicle to get to work that was damaged. Find out how you can repair, replace, or borrow replacements for any assistive technology that was damaged during the disaster. And it can include various items such as mobility devices, speaking devices, hearing aids, or specialized computer equipment. Um, Also, in consideration to your home, um, one of the things that my wife and I were talking about that kind of hit us like a bolt of lightning when we were watching the news in the midst of of the fires was the idea that if you were under the unfortunate circumstance of having your home destroyed because of the fire, it's terrible to think that not only are you faced with the um the hardship of whether or not you're going to rebuild, but you still owe the mortgage that you took out on that home that no longer exists anymore. It's the most heartbreaking thing. So one of the things that we think about in when we're thinking about home is you still need to continue making your house payments, um, even in the result of a disaster. It's just absolutely terrible, but it's the reality of this situation. Another thing, assess and document damage in writing and through photos. Um, Contact insurance providers about the damage that was incurred by your home, and utilize your homeowner's insurance. Contact your landlord if you're renting to talk about the damage. You can get help from HUD, which is the Department of Housing and Urban Development. HUD sponsors housing counseling agencies throughout the country that can provide advice and other support. And there's also nonprofit HUD certified housing counseling agencies that can provide assistance to you free of charge in in case of a disaster. Um, yeah, it's just absolutely terrible to think about these things. The next thing to consider is income slash your job. Contact your employer to inform them of your situation. You may need to contact your benefits provider if you receive public benefits or pension benefits or disability benefits. Give them a forwarding address um, if that is the circumstances that you're under as a result of having to vacate your house. Um, Keep track of how many days of work you miss because the disaster could definitely impact the amount of money that you earn. Keep track of how many days you're unable to live at home due to the disaster. It could be relevant for taxes and insurance purposes. For example, an insurance policy may include a loss of use provision that covers expenses you had to pay because you were unable to live in your home. Um, Care for service animals or animals in general for the most part. Contact disability insurance providers if you're unable to work following a disaster. Explore public benefits you may now be eligible to receive as a result. Um, and then if there were any fatalities, God forbid, um, you'd have to contact if you have life insurance to set up a claim. And then if you're a member of a household as a student, contact your school and whether or not you have financial aid with that that helps pay for school, you may need to contact them as well to let them know what's going on. And then we can't forget that during disaster, we also are still responsible for bills and other expenses too. So it's important to remember to continue paying your bills. Paying late or not at all can result in penalties and fees. It can result in interest charges and damages to your credit score as well. You may have to contact the post office and let them know where to deliver or forward your mail. You'll have to do this because you may not have bill pay set up and you may still be receiving paper statements in order to pay your bills. So it's important to keep your correspondence flowing so that you're not missing any of those payments. You'll want to contact creditors, such as utility companies, credit card companies, or loan providers that you have loans out with. Make sure they have your current contact information and mailing address. Discuss your current situation with them and what flexibility can be offered in the amount and timing of upcoming payments that you're responsible for. Your creditors will always more than likely work with you for the appropriate solution for your current circumstance. So it's important to contact them to let them know what's going on because the bottom line is that they want to receive the payment and the money that you owe them. So they want to make sure that they're doing everything to make sure that they are maintaining that relationship with. Um, and uh, Another thing is keeping records of what you spend as you recover from the disaster. So it may be important to keep receipts of things that you're spending. And thanks for dropping in the chat the link there. And then we also have access to assistance programs that provide help for people affected with disasters. We're talking about things like shelter, food, other necessities that could be provided that could reduce the expense that you would have to occur otherwise. And other things are activated when it's a result of a disaster like the fires that we went through. If something's declared a disaster recovery area, there's certain things that people can access, whether it be things like help with home mortgage payments or things like small business uh, grants that can help you reestablish your business and things of that nature as well. And then also protecting your money. And here we go. And protecting money. Get and review your free credit reports at annualcreditreport.com. Look for errors that indicate your identity has been stolen after a disaster. Make sure that there's no charges. Excuse me. Make sure that no one took out any loans um, in your name, for example, as well. Make sure that you're contacting financial institutions if you have to report a loss of like a debit card or ATM card or your credit card or checks that may have been lost or destroyed as well. Um, if you can't locate a credit card because you evacuated your house for whatever reason, you'll want to make sure that you're calling your service provider to let them know that they need to cancel that card and try to expedite and send you one as soon as possible. Um, Find a safe place for financial information, cash valuables that you took with you when you were evacuated. Contact the post office to let them know where to deliver the mail. Um, and then another thing is you want to limit the risk that others would have access to your mail, which is why you want to make sure that your mail is being delivered to a safe and secure place as well. Um, and uh, be proactive. So be proactive if you have any issues with companies as you recover from a disaster. First, contact the company directly. If it doesn't produce the desired result, contact the appropriate federal or state regulatory agency for help or for guidance as well. These websites and phone numbers are going to be within the participant guide. I don't think I have it listed here, but in on page 12 inside the recovery or inside the participant guide, excuse me, there's more steps that you can go into in detail as far as financial recovery is concerned. And within there, you'll see those items. And you can remember from the discussion that we've had tonight and filling out these items here. And more specifically, where you can get help. So, places that you can get help, disasterassistance.gov is a website that lists disaster assistance information from federal, tribal, state, local, and private sector partners. By entering some deep details about your situation, you can view a list of programs and resources that could be helpful for you. There's also FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Disaster recovery centers are also important resources for connecting you to disaster recovery help. Disaster recovery centers are accessible facilities and mobile offices that you can visit to learn more about assistance programs if necessary. Disaster assistance organizations often hold disaster relief and recovery meetings as well. The meetings can connect you to important information about disaster assistance. Donations, supplies may also be distributed at these meetings as well. Find out about these meetings and be sure to attend or send someone in your place. FEMA disaster recovery centers are likely to know dates, times, and places of where these meetings are occurring. Financial recovery resources. So we're going to review some resources that are important for financial recovery. As we mentioned earlier, disasterassistance.gov is a central place to learn about disaster assistance for disaster assistance loans and programs that may be needed based on your current situation. FEMA manages the Individuals and Households Program, which offers financial assistance to eligible individuals and households. The SBA, the Small Business Administration, provides low interest, long-term disaster loans to repair or replace underinsured or uninsured property damaged in a disaster. They provide these loans to businesses of all sizes, private, nonprofit organizations, homeowners, and renters. SBA disaster loans offer an affordable way for individuals and businesses to recover from disasters. The Department of Agriculture provides loans for recovery of homes, businesses, and farms as well. And then the department, HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, approved housing counseling agencies throughout the country to provide advice on buying a home, renting, defaults, foreclosure, and any credit issues that are associated to a disaster. You can go to hud.gov/find a counselor to get more help there. And then I think lastly, the last thing is watching out for scams because, like we already said, there's the unfortunate circumstance that's absolutely heartbreaking of being taken advantage of in your most vulnerable time after a disaster. Not everyone who offers help is legitimate. It's really, really terrible. Be on the lookout for scams by people who are taking advantage of your situation. Protect yourself by being cautious. Be selective when you hire or accept help. Scammers could be posing as home repair contractors. They could be posing as charities or other organizations involved in disaster relief efforts. One important thing you can do is get and check references from people you know. Ask to see state or local permits from home repair contractors and other professionals. Don't pay a contractor in full up front before they finish all the work you hired them to do, especially for big jobs like home repairs. Get and keep receipts. Don't pay for services that should be free. For example, FEMA and SBA are not going to charge. These disaster assistance inspections are for free. HUD-approved housing counseling agencies do not charge for their services either. Um, Research the organizations that you're not familiar with. You can ask for local references. You can also read about other people's experiences with the company through online rating systems as well. Protect your information. Avoid sharing your social security number. Avoid sharing your bank account number or information, and make sure that other personal information is being secured. If someone asks you to share this information with them, ask them why they need it. Um, uh, Monitor your credit reports. We kind of already talked about this. Go to annualcreditreport.com, pull that, make sure that everything on there is yours and that there's no funny business going on with people taking out loans in your name and things of that nature. Read scam alerts and reports. You can go to the Federal Trade Commission or the FTC maintains a running list. Consumer.ftc.gov. You can go on there to review the scam alerts that are frequent as well. In the apply it section in the participant guide, we're not going to cover this now, but in this scenario, they're talking about Phyllis and Phyllis in identifying and spotting the red flags that could be associated with um, people taking advantage of her during a disaster. Go through this and you can see some of the things um, so that you can be better prepared, like Phyllis, in case of a disaster. Adjust your financial picture after a disaster. You obviously take time to grieve and get used to the new reality. Even if you made financial preparation before a disaster, your financial situation may be vastly different now. Review your household spending and savings plan if you have it and make the necessary adjustments if necessary. Contact lenders and work with them if you're having difficulty making your payments. Contact your financial institution to find out if they have any programs or initiatives that can help support you in your recovery efforts. um, get and review your credit reports, set new goals. Unfortunately, uh, after a disaster, it may be necessary for you to reevaluate your situation so that you can be not only better prepared for the long-term future, but the short term as well. And I believe that will bring us to a close on being prepared for disaster in this final section as we wrap up. developing an initial plan to recover financially from a disaster, and the steps necessary to watch out for scams. So yeah, that brings us to our conclusion of being prepared for disasters. I see that we had dropped in one more comment in the chat. Yes, absolutely. Do we have any questions about recovering from a disaster, or maybe anything else that came up as we were talking through this?
Feel free to unmute yourselves. All right. Well, either way, thank you so much, Tom. We do appreciate all the information that was provided. I mean, this is going to be very helpful for anybody who's, been affected by the wildfires. So we do appreciate you taking the time to share the awareness and information that you did today. And then I guess we'll just catch you on the 19th for
Yeah.
banking services. All right. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Lisa. Have a good night.
You too. Bye.
Bye.